Recording now.
Yeah. Morning, everyone. First of all, some apologies from me. My webcam is not working and I've got my computer at an angle, so that's why I'm looking quite well visually, slightly side on. So apologies for that. But welcome to the spring term all S&AS all staff meeting on the 16th of Feb. It's good to see everyone, and a welcome from me and my DMT colleagues. And the first slide should actually show you or remind you who we all are in terms of DMT. I won't repeat the names because hopefully most of them will be obvious to you. Just to mention the Office of the Academic Registrar, Vanya Gallimore, who's our Culture and Engagement Manager, and Helen, who's PA and Office Manager to the Academic Registrar as well. So welcome to everyone, and also to members of the DMT, who will all be participating quite actively in this session, as you will see. Today's session, if we look at slide 3, we will launch our vision and values work in student and academic services. We'll also provide an update on recent realignment work and wellbeing work as well for you to note, and of course leave time for any questions that you may have as well. And we would like this session to be as interactive as possible, and we'll be leaving plenty of time for your questions, and Tom will be facilitating the Q&A at the end. Please use the chat feature in Zoom if there's anything that you'd like to ask me or any member of our DMT. And as I said, we're going to share the workload amongst our DMT members, and you can share your question with everyone at the meeting or just with Tom. That decision is totally with you. Please note, this meeting is being recorded for colleagues not able to attend today, and everyone is on mute to start with, but please unmute yourself for the Q&A when you want to ask a question. That's just a little reminder. Okay, let's talk about student and academic services vision and values, slide 4. What are we doing, you might well ask? Well, as part of the Student and Academic Services Culture Programme, our main objective for the spring term is to update the Directorate vision and values. You'll recall that when we did previous sessions, the feedback that we got from you was that the vision was not inclusive of all members of student and academic services, and we agreed to review that vision so that we would capture not just the student perspective, but also include academic and research staff as well as part of that. And also our values. Some of you may have values in your respective areas, but what we want to do is to develop a set of values for the entirety of the directorate that is student and academic services, ensuring that our work is fully aligned with the new University Strategy 2030. And if we move on to the next slide, our vision and values will set out our aspirations and ambitions, as well as our working principles and behaviours around areas such as communication, collaboration, customer focus, and community building, and also importantly, the recognition of our staff. And that's not always financial, recognition in its broadest terms. Following our collective discussions across the directorate, we will update our PDR process so that everyone can build their individual and team objectives for 2022-23 around our shared vision and values and the new University Strategy 2030. Having that clear line of sight between the work that we do on an individual basis and how that supports and feeds into the work of the directorate and the wider university as well. And at this point, I'll hand over to Zoe to talk about the why.
Thanks, Wayne. So this has been a really challenging couple of years, but it's also been a time when we've achieved an enormous amount as a directorate, which has helped support staff, students, and each other. There's a lot of change going on right now with the new university strategy, the change programme, and the professional services delivery workstream. All of those pieces of work are going to set the scene for the work that we do for the foreseeable future. So this work on our vision and values as a directorate, it may feel like just another piece of work that we've got to do on top of everything else, but actually it's essential. So defining our vision and values is the starting point for agreeing, excuse me, what's important to us as a directorate. So it's about how we work and how we feel about that work. And it's about how empowered all members of staff are to shape things and make a difference. Now, I'd expect a lot of people in the directorate to feel the strongest sense of belonging to their immediate team, or perhaps to their departments such as student life and wellbeing, or to the library and archives. You might ask what value there is in having a set of vision and values for student and academic services. So why is it important to feel a sense of belonging at that level rather than just to your team or to the wider university? But identity is important. So across the directorate, we all do different things, but we all share a passion and commitment to providing the best possible experience for the people that we work with. Having a shared identity and purpose and a collective set of priorities will help us to provide a high quality service, but one that's also joined up across the directorate, which I think is really important. And it'll also bring advantages for our staff. So I've worked with many different teams in the directorate over the years, and I think that's left me in a really privileged position in terms of the knowledge that I've gained. Excuse me, I think I'm getting a bit of a cold. So it's not just about knowing things or knowing what to do in a certain situation. It's also about knowing who to go to, who can get things done, and how we actually do things to provide the best service possible for all our staff and students. I'd like to create opportunities for all our staff to gain that knowledge. Having that knowledge enables us to do our jobs better. It also enables us to make improvements to things as we go along. The other thing that it helps with is supporting career opportunities. So by knowing what other roles are out there and the skills that we need to do it, we can progress in our careers. Now, maybe it's because I've moved around a lot in the directorate, but I feel a strong sense of belonging to the directorate as a whole rather than just to my own team. And that makes me feel part of a wider community. And this work on vision and values will help create that sense of community across our new directorate. So I'm now going to hand over to Vanya, who's going to talk about how we actually go about this work.
Thanks, Zoe. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit practically about what we're going to be doing and what our approach is going to be. So I've been reading a lot about different approaches to vision and values work in organisations, and I've got some experience myself in supporting these kind of exercises where I've worked before. And I think what always strikes me is that it's really coming up with a set of vision and values is a really difficult thing to get right and a really easy thing to get wrong. So I think you can come up with an amazing set of values and principles that sound great in a very, very kind of PR way. But I think unless these are truly embedded within the organisation in ways that are genuinely practical and meaningful for everybody, I think they'll just sit on the shelf and gather dust and not make any tangible difference whatsoever. So obviously we want to really avoid that in S&AS, and what we want to do is to come up with an approach, some vision and values that are genuinely meaningful and practical for everybody. So what we've come up with is a set of 5 core principles that we want to work with. So I'm just going to run through those quickly if that's all right. And the first is around focus, clarity and simplicity. So I think with so much going on for everybody at the moment, and there's been a massive amount the last couple of years, we need to focus now on what matters the most and build a kind of shared vision and values that are clear, simple and achievable. And I put up this quote from Bruce Daisley, who's an organisational theorist. I really like his work. I've been reading a lot about it recently. He's written a book called The Future of Work, and he's got a great podcast if anybody's interested. But he's got a great quote here, and he says, keep it simple. So focus on 3 to 4 values that you want managers and teams to live by, and then outline a few key behaviours that map to each value. So focus, clarity and simplicity will be key. And I really want that to be a big part of our work. So I don't want it to be overcomplicated. I think we just need to focus on some key core values to go alongside our vision. And then I think our second kind of principle that we want to work with is around sort of positive intent. So why are we doing this? And we're doing this because we do genuinely believe it will make a difference. So just kind of echoing what Zoe said there, I genuinely think that having a kind of vision and values helps to create the right kind of culture that we want to be part of. and we want to build that kind of supportive and shared community. But we're really conscious as well that there's so much going on for everybody at the moment, and it's been a massively challenging couple of years. So we want to be very mindful of workloads and people's time. We don't want this to be a huge exercise that takes up everybody's time and is distracting. That's not the intent at all. So we'll be very mindful of everybody's workloads, and I'll come in a minute to actually the practicalities of what we're doing, and hopefully you'll see that it will very much hopefully align with what we're already doing and not be too much extra work for everybody. We want it to be inclusive, engaging, so we want everybody to have the opportunity to participate and be listened to. So DMT are having an away day next Friday, 25th of February, to have an initial discussion around vision and values. And after that, we'll be running a series of facilitated sessions in March, and everybody is welcome to come along to those, and we'll be asking people to sign up. And really sort of through those sessions, gathering ideas about what kind of culture you want to be part of, what's important to you, what do you think our priorities should be. And the idea behind those sessions is that every conversation and contribution will directly feed into ultimately what our vision and values is going to look like. So really do hope that it's a process that feels inclusive and engaging for everybody. And then our sort of fourth principle, sort of leading on from that, is about being innovative. So what we want to do, and I think it's something we want to think of as part of our kind of wider culture, we want to try some new things as part of this. So I've been looking at two kind of different approaches, and the first one is around appreciative inquiry, which some of you may or may have come across. So essentially it's a kind of collaborative strengths-based approach to organisational change, and it focuses on what's already working well within organisations, what are the positive, and where we can build on our existing strengths. So it's a really sort of nice approach. I've not used it before, I'm learning about it. I'm working with some colleagues in the directorate to sort of build our approach around it. So more to come on that shortly. But that's one of the techniques we want to look at. I also want to sort of go back and draw a bit more on the work of Bruce Daisley. So I've mentioned that recently. He's got some really nice ideas around continuous improvement and inclusive change. So rather than having that very centralized sort of top-down transformation, it's about encouraging change to sort of spread throughout the organisation, throughout the directorate. So we look at what's working well, what's not working well, we kind of work together to build our kind of approach around change and values. So I think there's a number of different approaches that we can take. We're going to try out some new things. We're going to take some risks. I appreciate some things will work, probably some things won't work as well, but we'll learn from them. And I think trying out new things is important. So I hope you'll sort of bear with us while we try some new ideas with this. But I think ultimately, in our final principle, it's got to be practical and it's got to be meaningful. So as I said at the beginning, I don't want us to do all of this work and then it just sits on the shelf and nobody ever kind of looks at it again. So once we've established our vision and values, we'll be working to really embed those across the directorate, and starting with the PDR process. So how can we kind of update that process so that it's genuinely meaningful for people and that you can see a direct link between your work every day and the wider work of the directorate and the university. So that's a very kind of brief overview of the kind of approach that we want to take. What will this look like in practice? So the idea is that we will, throughout March, we're going to be running two different kinds of sessions. So DMT have their away day on the 25th of February, and after that away day, we'll be emailing out, setting out what we're going to be doing with our sessions in March. And there'll be two different sessions, two different exercises. So the first one will be in teams, and it's providing that line of sight from all of our roles to the university strategy. So we'll be talking about, what is the university strategy, why does it matter, and how does it impact on our work every day? How can we contribute to that? So that's the first kind of exercise. The second exercise will be facilitated sessions, and I'm very grateful. I've got a great group of facilitators from across the directorate who very kindly agreed to help with these sessions. So thank you very much to that group. So we'll be running a number of sessions throughout March and really encourage you all to sort of sign up and take part in the conversations. These sessions will be cross-team, so we'll be encouraging sort of cross-collaboration, cross-discussions across everybody. And the idea will be looking at what kind of directorate do we want to be part of? What should our culture look like? how can it be the best that it can be for everybody? And I think by having those kind of conversations and discussions, the idea is that hopefully our vision and values will emerge from that in a very sort of collaborative way. So we'll have those sessions throughout March, pull all of that information and analysis together in April, and then the plan is to launch the vision and values April, maybe start of May, that sort of time period. So that's what we're working to. I hope that makes sense to everybody. There'll be much more information to follow after we've had the DMT away day. So we'll be emailing out with information about the sessions and how you can sign up. And I really encourage you to ask questions, take part, and just let us know what you think, what you want to see happening in the directorate. So I think that was all from me. I'm going to hand over to Jo just to kind of conclude this part of the session. Thanks, Jo.
Thanks, Vanya. So just to summarise, really, as Zoe and Vanya have mentioned, what we're aiming to do as a directorate is come up with a shared set of values that all staff across the directorate can work to, and that become part of and embedded in what we do. And alongside that shared vision and values, each department within S&AS will need to define and develop its own strategy and priorities, which will be informed by thinking about the connection between departments, the directorate vision, and the university strategy. So your head of department, your DMT member, will be following up with you shortly about this to let you know how you can get involved. It may feel a lot to think about over the coming months, and there'll be lots of conversations happening, but as Zoe mentioned, this is really important work. It's with your ideas and input that hopefully by the summer we'll be able to better define, understand and articulate our priorities and what they are, both as a department, a directorate, and how this work feeds into the overarching university strategy. And I think I'm handing over to Hannah now to talk about the realignment review. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo. You are indeed. So yeah, I just want to give a quick update on where we're up to with the realignment review. We obviously asked for people to contribute their comments, thoughts and their advice throughout the month of January. So thank you all very much for doing that. It's great to have received those comments in. The advice and the thoughts and the discussions that you've clearly had within your teams gives us a really good insight into how people are feeling around the realignment. So Vanya and I are currently at the moment working our way through all of that information that we have gathered. And we are hoping to produce a report that will focus on, we'll tease out some of the key themes. So we'll highlight the themes from the feedback that we've received, and we'll touch on some of the challenges and the opportunities that we've experienced over the course of the last year or so. And what we will do is produce that report and share that with people so that people can have a look through that. And importantly, what we will be looking to do, we'll be looking to focus on the ideas that you've shared with us as the things that you want to see going forward within our directorate. So that really will start to build up our action plan of what we start to take forward. So thank you very much for that contribution that you've made already. It's great to see the insight that's come in from teams and from our critical friends as well. And we will look to share that report with you as soon as we can. That will be within the next couple of weeks or so. So thank you for that. I'm handing over to Tom now, I think, to talk about staff wellbeing.
Yep, thank you, Hannah. So I think we've communicated at a previous all staff meeting that wellbeing within S&AS is one of our top priorities, and we committed to establishing a wellbeing group for S&AS. Vanya and I have met with a number of colleagues across S&AS, so key staff who have particular expertise in this area. We've met with colleagues in the established LALS wellbeing group, critical friends, and also DTEF, who are also trying to establish their own well-being agenda. And I think it was very clear from those conversations that we need to be very clear on what the scope of the group is. What can we achieve through this group? Because we don't want to just have lots of good conversations and no actions and you not see the impact that is hopefully going to have. So what are we trying to solve? What are the different issues and challenges you as staff actually deal with on a day-to-day basis? You know, what's happening at a university level that we need to be aware of, and what's within our gift and our authority to actually change. And I've been very clear from the start that whatever we do has to be evidence-based. So using evidence through staff sickness absence, where strategic university projects are having a particular issue on certain areas of S&AS and certain teams, and also getting personal individual feedback from you as colleagues. And we're proposing to establish a bi-monthly pulse survey, and a big thank you to a number of the Critical Friends group who have fed into that. I think we had about 5 or 6 different iterations of those questions to establish a really useful set of questions to hopefully identify what the root cause of wellbeing challenges are potentially across S&AS staff, but also where the positive wellbeing is seen as well. And the questions will range around work and also outside of work as well. I know it's another survey. It will take only between 5 and 10 minutes, but I think it's really important that colleagues feed in. We don't always know what's happening on the ground within DMT, and we're the group that can actually make life easier for colleagues and staff. So please fill out that survey. Please be honest. It will be anonymous. We're not looking at a team level at this stage. We may do at later points on the pulse survey, but at the moment, we're wanting to get a holistic view of what's happening around wellbeing within the directorate. So a survey will be followed up in the next few days, which will come through from Wayne. That's all I wanted to update on wellbeing. I haven't had any questions either directly to me or through the general chat. So please feed any questions that you have through on any of what you've heard today or anything else that you may want to ask. We did have a question in advance of the meeting today, and it's a question that I'll direct to Joe if that's okay. So the question is, will staff feedback be sought in the review of the remote working policy?
Thanks, Tom. I believe it was mentioned in the recent email from the Chief Operating Officer, Joss Ivory, but I understand that the Central HR team will be seeking feedback across the university in April, I believe, ahead of the summer term, and I'm hopefully, and all staff will be invited to attend feedback, and I'm hoping that we will have a chance to have sight of our directorate's results there, so we can consider your feedback and any actions we might want to take in response to that. Alongside the remote working policy from Central HR, I think it's important that we look at the space feedback as well. So we've introduced a number of space arrangements in response to hybrid working, and I'd like to complete a review of that in the summer term as well to see how that's going. And if you have any comments or suggestions in the meantime, then please send them through to me or via the Ask DMT feedback form. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions from colleagues? You can either put it in the chat, raise your hand in the reactions button.
Can I just say, Tom, while we're waiting perhaps for people to put questions in, that we're conscious as a DMT that everybody's working incredibly hard. And we also know that there's a lot that the university is doing at the moment. We've talked about that. And the university is pressing ahead with a number of initiatives. And I, as a member of UEB, am responsible for that. And I just want you to know that we understand that there's a lot happening at the moment, a hell of a lot for the university to get on top of. And UEB's talked about this, and we've talked about prioritizing projects better than we have done in the past. And we've talked about reminding ourselves as a university that we've got a strategic plan that stretches until 2030. So we don't have to do everything in the first year or two. Actually, there's a sense in which it's spread over the next 9 years or so, 9 or 8 years. And we need to keep on reminding ourselves of that. And very much we're trying to set things up for the future, provide a platform for that future work. But we do know and we do recognize that does cause pressure on existing staff. And we're really grateful for the continued commitment that everyone's showing. And we know that it's been a very, very difficult 2 years together with not just change, but also the pandemic as well. I just wanted to register that and also give you time to put forward any questions that you may wish to put to the whole of our directorate management team.
Thank you, Wayne. I've had a couple of questions through. So one question from a colleague who's been absent due to COVID. Hannah, will there be more opportunities for colleagues to feed into the realignment review, or are we at the point now where we're not able to accept further feedback?
No, absolutely. I think we should still we're absolutely fine to accept feedback coming in. It's not an end of conversation. So I think the Google form will still be available, and we can reshare that. Vanya and I are starting to formulate the themes and pull together the report, but there still should be an opportunity, conscious that some people may have been off sick. So if people want to get in touch with either Vanya or myself, we can reshare the form, or if it's easier for people to have conversations with us, we can do it in that way as well. So yeah, no problem at all with providing feedback.
Thank you, Hannah. A question for Vanya, just relating to the sessions that you mentioned, the value sessions that we're going to employ. Are the sessions going to be virtual, in person, or a mix?
So we're planning to do a mix of sessions, actually, hopefully in terms of the sort of COVID restrictions being eased. So we'll do a mixture of sessions on Zoom and actually in person as well on campus. And as part of those sessions, we're also going to mix up numbers. So we're going to do some quite small group sessions, and we're going to do some larger group sessions just to see how those work and the differences there. So yes, absolutely, we'll be doing a mix of in person and over Zoom. But as I said, more details to come at the beginning of March about the sessions.
Great, thank you, Vanya. Any further questions?
They all look fairly serious there, Tom. I'm not sure if they're smiling or judging us at all.
I've got another question, Wayne, and it's directed at you.
Right, okay.
So, in anticipation of the detailed realignment review, what do you see as the advantages of what we've done so far as a first take?
Well, I think that's a very good question, and colleagues will remember that when we went through the initial realignment process, what we talked about was realigning teams or putting them together. And that was the start of the process. And that would enable us to actually look at how those teams work together, whether or not we could actually create improvements in terms of the way that we work, better ways of working. We've talked about working perhaps more effectively together. And that's why we've had the movement of teams across different departments or service areas within student and academic services. So I think that's established us for the future, and also puts us in a position where we can actually meet the demands of the new University Strategy 2030 better than we would have been able to do previously. And I think that's important as well. So I think from my perspective, the teams are in place, and I don't believe that necessarily that's a fixed thing. I think we should be brave enough to say there are certain things that may need tweaking. There are certain things we need to look at and review. There are perhaps things that we've discovered that we can do better in terms of those teams. And we may wish to realign teams differently as well. And I don't think we should be afraid to say, well, we may not have got it right the first time, in some cases. So we may need to tweak that structure slightly. And I think we've got to be brave enough to do that. We've talked about being able to take risks. And I think there's nothing wrong in taking risks. And there's nothing wrong to say, actually, we may have got this slightly wrong as well. I think that's brave as well. But I certainly think that we're in a better position now to be able to address a lot of the university issues than we were previously. And I have to admit, there is the bit, for example, if we take the library, we've now put together the bit that deals with teaching and learning and learning services. That's together in one place. And that puts us in a better position to address the needs of staff, students of the university as well. So I think there are benefits to what we have done. I think we're in a good place. And as always, as we said earlier, if we believe in continuous improvement, there's always stuff we can do better. And I don't think we should be afraid to admit that as well.
Thanks, Wayne. You've also answered another question as you were speaking, which is fantastic. There's a question regarding an update on the professional services delivery work stream and how it potentially affects us. I'm happy to answer that, Wayne, because I was at Hops yesterday where there was a brief update. The work is continuing at a pace. Some areas are going to be developed much faster than others, and as Wayne noted, the plans are for a long horizon. They've identified 5 key work streams. There is information on the Change website. If people don't have access to that, we can send that out after this meeting. It also has updates on other university projects like modularisation, semesterisation as well. But the 5 core areas are looking at the department manager roles within academic departments, looking at a shared admin service, very similar to what's being established within S&AS, end-to-end research support, marketing and recruitment, and flexible roles and career progression. There's a sponsor for each of these areas, a project lead, and a working group as well. All of that is documented on the Change website. There are actually some videos as well for certain work streams that have developed more than most. So I'd encourage colleagues, if you are interested to get more information on the PSD work stream, that you go to that website. It's got quite a lot of good information on there. So at the moment, based on that question, nothing's significantly impacting us, but it will over time as that work progresses. And obviously, some will have a significant impact on us and some won't, depending on what roles we're in. Okay, it looks like we've got a couple more. So a question, what is meant by customer with regards to customer focus? Can I direct that to Vanya?
Yeah, customer's also sort of tricky word. So when I was working in the library, we talked a lot about customers and being everybody that we sort of dealt with. So it's a slightly emotive word, I think, but it's basically in the sense of our customers, our users, all the people that we provide services and support to. So I think we can have a discussion around our terminology there and what kind of wording we want to use. Essentially, the feeling there is that what we're trying to do is work with all the people that we're engaged with. So whether that's our customers, our users, our students, our academics, our external community, however we want to kind of phrase that, but be interested to have a bit of discussion with people about language and terminology and what we should be using there. It's one that we always sort of slightly battled with in the library to get right, and what term to use.
Thanks, Vanya.
I just want to say, Tom, I don't want us to get hung up on terminology. It's all about being student focused, staff focused, and it's about addressing the people that consume or use our services, as Vanya said, the users of our services. I've been to a number of universities where people go into long, windy arguments about what does customer mean, and it creates a lot of division. But I'd like just to keep, as we said earlier in this presentation, keep things simple. And I think let's look at the people that use and make use of our services, both staff and students, and it's about improving the service that we can provide to them and visitors as well. And I think that's a simple way that I would look at it, being a simple man myself.
Next question, I'd probably have directed this at Kirsty because it's around digital innovation, but Wayne, you may be able to give your view on it. So is the university looking to align teams related to digital innovation, development, maintenance and skills support more clearly to support the future of the university?
I think it'd be great to get to Kirsty's take on this. I don't know if she's back from Hops yet with her paper, but the honest answer to that is that there is certainly, as a university executive board, a view that we need to be able to provide a more joined up service to students and staff. And digital's quite key to that in terms of the physical and digital infrastructure of the university. And we'd like to get that properly aligned. We've not discussed how we're going to do that, but there's certainly a need to address it, and also addressing the digital skills and needs of our students and staff population is part of that as well. So there is a sense in which, yes, we'd like to do more on the digital front. We think that we're way behind other universities, and of course we are. And there's a desire from the executive for us to actually do much better in that area. There's another question. Is Kirsty back at all from her jaunt with hops, Tom?
I can't see her on screen, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can provide a further extension to that answer via an FAQ a bit later on as well. That may be helpful to colleagues. And there's something else in the chat, I think.
Yes, bear me a second. And thank you, Hannah, for posting the PSD link. So I have a question or a comment from Amanda Wayne. I'll read it out. So with regards to Wayne's point about we should be braver if we think there are areas that could be improved, I think the problem is here, if you raise such a point in your area of work, you can risk making your colleagues feel uncomfortable and thus isolate yourself. What advice can you give here?
Yeah, I hope that that's not the case. I really would. But my view is actually, if there are any suggestions, any ideas that colleagues may have that they wish to share, then please share them with us, with your DMT colleagues. I would suggest sending them through to Vanya Gallimore in the first instance as the key contact to be able to house all of that, and we will look at it. But I would hope as a directorate that we all sign up to the view that we're about looking at what we do and about continually improve what we do, because we want to provide a better staff and student experience. And I hope that we all buy into that, because I think that's a great way to look at the way we work. And also, I take great pride in us being focused on supporting students, staff, and visitors. And I hope that we see that, because we're fairly central to that, actually. We are a key student and staff facing service. And I think we provide great value for money. And I would hope that we take on board new ideas or suggestions to improve what we do, because I think that's what we're about.
Wayne, can I just add to that? I think it's a really great question, that, and it's certainly something that we need to be looking at taking forward. And this really does link in with our culture and our values work in terms of how we want to operate as an organisation, as a unit, as a service area. And I think it comes down to trust as well. I think it comes down to trust in ourselves and with our colleagues as well. And to be able to create that environment where we feel safe to raise new ideas and to take risks and to support one another as well. And there might well be mistakes that we make along the way, but they are the best sort of learning environments, aren't they? So we need to really make sure that we are creating those environments where people feel safe to raise ideas. And that creates diversity of thought, and it enables us to think about things in different ways. And it might not be the thing that we end up running with, but it's linked into a other idea that's had that actually does work, and we can take that forward. So I think it comes back down to trust as well within each other and colleagues, and having open-mindedness to explore new ways of working and to explore different interactions and connections with one another. So I really do see that as being part of the work that we are looking to do to create that environment for our service and our directorate.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Well
Thanks,
said.
Question for you, Hannah, or Vanya, on the realignment. So it's great to make a report to summarise the key themes coming out of the realignment review, but shouldn't the priority be addressing any of the problems that are flagged up, or maybe there are no problems highlighted?
Yeah, I can take that one, Tom. Yeah, certainly there are some things that are coming through that we will be taking a closer look at. Indeed, there are things that we want to be taking forward where we see as enhancements or as opportunities. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's been problems as such that's been raised, but the one thing that I would say is that we still need to give it a little bit of time. So whilst Wayne mentioned that, you know, we've gone through the process already, we need to give ourselves a little bit of time for it to stabilize as well. And of course, we will look to, as we've committed to doing another review in a year's time. We're only 6 months in at the moment, and we do still think that that's kind of early days, which is why why we wanted to do this checkpoint. And certainly there are things that are coming out of there that will be owned by DMT members taking forward, looking at some of the areas, some of the ideas that people have had to continuously improve our setup. But also at the same time, I'm very keen to make sure that we stabilize ourselves a little bit as well. So there won't necessarily be sweeping changes as a result. We've got to give ourselves that extra time and head towards autumn term, where we will hit the 12-month mark at that point. So
Excellent.
we will cover within the report, there will be the themes emerging, which will also feed into the work that we're doing with values and our vision. And we'll also try and, because what we don't want to do is produce a 20-odd page written report. We need to make it accessible, and we need to make it attractive to people to continue to engage with as well. So we are conscious of that.
Thanks, Hannah. Anything, Vanya, you want to update on that? Or you?
Yeah,
I think
just
Hannah's
to
covered it.
clarify that, as you know, been going through each and every piece of feedback, and where people have got ideas and suggestions, or where things haven't worked quite well, I have pulled all of those out into a big long list. So Hannah and I are working through those one by one. So every idea and suggestion that you've given, we are looking through all of those, and we will group those, and we'll be assigning those to sort of DMT leads to take forward. So we are looking through all of that. And as Hannah said, we'll hopefully be able to share as soon as we can. But there is a very practical side to the report as well.
Tom, I've just noticed that Kirsty's re-entered the meeting, so she's escaped from our HOPS colleague. So you might wish to put your question to Kirsty.
Yes, so Kirsty, there was a question earlier, and it was more in your world, and a bit about what you were feeding into HOPS as well, I suppose. So is the university looking to align teams related to digital innovation, development, maintenance and skill support more clearly to support the future of the university?
Yes, so this was one of the reasons why I was at HOPS. It's looking at how we can embed digital across the university much more widely, and we've been working closely with colleagues on the digital strategy as well, and inputting and looking at how that's going to work more widely across the university. I think it's quite early days, so that's maybe something I could come back and talk to once the digital strategy is just being kind of formulated at the moment, and there's a number of other initiatives going on, so that's maybe one I could bring back when there's a bit more detail within that sort of particular space. But I think that's all I can say just now.
Thanks, Kirsty. A question and comment from Miriam, which I think is open to everyone, so I won't read the whole thing, but I think it's more around the tangible updates, Miriam, is what you're driving for. I think with some of the projects, they're only just establishing, so there isn't that clarity, but we can feed that back to Neil Smith and the central PSD team, just about their communication plan, because not everyone even has access to the website, even though it's even there. So regular updates on progress, timeframes, and potential people impacted, I think, is a sensible request. So we can feed that back to Neil Smith and HOPS. Question or request from Robert. So when innovating, could we look at trying new ideas as small scale trials or experiments that might lower the cost of failure and allow greater risk taking? Vanya, I don't know if you want to come up with that, Hannah, or I'd be really interested in Wayne's take on that.
I'll kick off, then perhaps colleagues can jump in if they want to. I think, Robert, that's a great question. I think I certainly strongly support innovation, and I don't think we should be frightened of trying new ideas. And if we can do that on a small trial or experimental basis, all the better. And perhaps I would say, wouldn't I, as academic registrar, that in a number of areas, I think the academic section is doing that already in terms of our shared admin service that we've put in place, I think, to support the entirety of the directorate, and also with the formation of the 3 executive faculties. A lot of what we do operates along faculty lines already in a number of areas. Mentioned just 2, certainly careers operate along faculty lines, and indeed staff in Paula's area, student life and wellbeing, in terms of how we employ the student wellbeing officers, is done along faculty lines as well, even though they service and support departments within the faculty. And certainly we have a number of projects that we want to progress as a directorate, and we've appointed project managers to be able to help us do that, and indeed Robert as a senior business analyst as well. And so we'll be doing those little trials, little experiments, and my view is actually setting the way for the rest of the university to follow, as we have been doing already, I think, over the last couple of years or so. And I don't know if Vanya wants to add to that, or anybody else.
Yeah, I'll just come in quickly, Wayne. Thanks, Robert. That's a great question. And actually, it's one of the key principles that Bruce Daisley's talking about in his kind of Brave New Work. So absolutely, that's something that we need to be doing. And that's something that we can sort of do with everybody across the directorate. So looking at kind of small scale improvements, getting feedback from people, trialing out things, see if they work, see if they don't. So I think that absolutely should be part of our approach. And I hope we'll build that into our kind of vision values piece when we do that.
And I just want to add to that. I think, Robert, you're absolutely right. We should not be frightened of failure. We should take a risk. We're incredibly conservative as a university, and I'd like us to take more risks, actually, more considered risks anyway. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I would welcome that approach from colleagues. Obviously, there are boundaries there, but I would certainly support us actually be taking more risks than we do now.
Yeah, can I just add to that as well? Because there is definitely a balance with this, I think. But importantly, I think something that we perhaps do too much of is we jump straight to a solution before we understand what the problem is or what the opportunities are, and before we do that bit of discovery work. So if we do look to build in sort of experiments along the way, to test things out, to trial things, what we might end up finding is a different direction. And actually, that's the better direction to go on. So I am a big fan of that sort of way of working. It's quite agile in that sense. It brings in sort of design thinking concepts as well. But certainly through my experience of working at the university, we are really quick to jump to a solution straight off. And that's something that we would do well, I think, to pare back on a little bit and just, again, keep a bit more of an open mind. So then when we put something into practice, we can then see what the results are like. What does that tell us? But I appreciate that there is a balance, because certain things perhaps wouldn't work in that way, depending on what it is. But we should certainly be looking to create that environment where we're able to do that, because you just never quite know what might happen, what might materialize, or what new ideas may emerge that might have been better than the original idea in the first place. And we just need to be making sure that we're looking to solve the right problems or answer the right questions that we've got for ourselves. And I think the work that we're doing to bring sort of the project work together across the directorate and seeing how that will help bring people together, that's going to be absolutely key to us moving forward and taking on some of the changes that we want to do and implementing the theme of continuous improvement. So I see that's a great move for us as a directorate, to really be thinking about how we deliver change in our projects across the directorate and bringing in those concepts.
Great, thank you, everyone. I like the considered risks comment, Wayne. I think it's really important, because as a university we are very, very conservative. I know UEB are looking at risk management and how we can be more bold to advance the university. So great question there, Robert. Thank you.
Tom, can I just add to that, actually?
Yeah.
I think that's an important point, because UEB has looked at the issue of risk and corporate risk, and we take the view, and I fully support it, that we should look upon risks as being opportunities to promote the university strategy and the university's ambitions. And we should look at it in that sense, rather than as something that effectively prevents us from doing stuff. Let's look at it as a catalyst for fulfilling our ambitions and taking us forward as an institution. So we flip it on its head. And I'm very keen that we pursue that in student and academic services as well.
Thanks, Wayne. Another question for Vanya. Great engagement this morning, so thank you, everyone. So I've noticed a culture project on the Change Google site. How might this impact on the work S&AS will be doing with culture and values?
Yeah, so the work that we're doing in S&AS, we want to very much align with the wider university sort of change programme. So part of my role is to kind of build networks and work with colleagues across the university, which I am doing. So I've got a number of kind of critical friends I'm working with in POD, for example, who are taking quite a strong lead with the sort of cultural change, and also with HR as well. So I'm working very closely with colleagues outside of the directorate to make sure that anything that we do here is aligning and working in collaboration with that wider university change piece.
Thanks, Vanya. And a really good question from Grant, probably more for you in terms of our values work. So I wonder how equality, diversity and inclusion will be promoted through the directorate. Yeah,
that's a great question. Thank you, Grant. So last term, when we started really thinking about the culture work and what our priorities would be, we started identifying a number of areas that we wanted to build kind of groups across the directorate to look at. So we started with staff wellbeing. Obviously, Tom's leading on that. We've got the Green Gathering, which Joe and I are leading on. And the other area then that we want to sort of move towards is exactly that equality, diversity, inclusion. So what we want to be doing initially is set up a group of staff across the directorate to have a conversation around what we need to do as a directorate, what should our work in that area look like. So that will be the next area that you'll start to see a call out for people to get involved and to be part of that initial conversation. And then we can work out what our next steps are going to be in that area. But it's absolutely what we need to be focusing on. So more to come very soon, Grant, on that. I'd love to do everything at once and I can't. So I'm just trying to, just trying to prioritise, but those are our top 3 things that we're working on. So there'll be something coming out soon, Grant.
A comment from Lucy, just speaking to and supporting Grant's comment. Are there any final questions before we hand back to Wayne for closing remarks? No, well, thank you for everyone engaging with so many great questions. We'll still have the feedback mechanism that you can submit questions to. We do get them, they are anonymous. So if you're wanting action, please put your name against it, because sometimes we get some great questions and we want to actually respond, but we don't know who it's come from. So if you do require a specific response, please note your name if you go through that mechanism, or please come to any of DMT members as well. So Wayne, can I come back to you to close the session, please?
Yeah, thanks everyone for attending. But before we go, I'd like to just say a few words about a dear colleague of ours that is leaving us at the end of March. Paula Tunbridge, our Director of Student Life and Wellbeing, as you know, is heading into the sunny climes of retirement at the end of March. And I just want to say, and I know DMT wants to say, she's been an absolutely fantastic colleague to work with, really is committed and incredibly supportive of her staff. I don't know if her colleagues appreciate just how strongly supportive she is of all of her staff, certainly in our one-to-one meetings and indeed in DMT meetings as well. She's been a phenomenal asset to student life and well-being, and also to the wider directorate and university as well. I just want to take this time, Paula, to wish you well. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your time. And thank you for actually putting your heart and soul into your job as well. And you certainly added a very precious dimension to the way that we operate and think. I just wanted to say a public thank you to you for that. And we'll have an opportunity to say thank you in other opportunities as well. But just in terms of the whole directorate, just wanted to say thank you for everything and wish you well for your retirement. I think we should give her a round of applause actually before I finish off.
A bit weird on Zoom, but thank you very much, Wayne. It's been a privilege, and I think just listening to the conversation today, there's clearly so much more to do, but the truth is the strength is about being together, and I think that's what all of this work is about. And some of it's a bit hard to get your head around, but we are all stronger together. And the more we understand about the work that we do and the interactions, that we can make that difference to student lives, but also to staff lives, because it's a very symbiotic relationship. And if we haven't got happy staff, we've not got happy students. So that experience needs to, you know, needs to be great for everybody. So yeah, thank you. They're very kind words, and it has been a real privilege. So I'll see you soon. I'm not going quite yet, folks. I'll be here till the end of March, so I'll hopefully see some of you in the flesh as well at some point. Well, not too much flesh anyway, but you know what I mean. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Paula. And remember, colleagues, symbiosis is a relationship where both benefit as a result of the association. So that's a great word to use, Paula. Just to say to everyone, thank you for attending. The next steps on our vision and values work will be followed by an email that will go out after the 25th of Feb. Tom's referred to it. I'd like to encourage you all to get involved and to help shape the work of our directorate. Take care, and thank you everyone for your contributions. A really good interactive session. Take care and enjoy the rest of the day. And I'm going back almost to my annual leave. Bye-bye.